So welcome to 21 degrees. It's warmer than my sitting room gets, which tells me I'm in Fuerteventura. And this is an island, part of the Canary Islands. It's very, very close to the North African coast. And that really explains a lot. So here I'm waking up in my bedroom with the fan that you noticed at the beginning there. And the first thing you notice about the house is it's dark, very dark, and they need the houses to be dark because of the sheer intensity of the light outside. It's incredible. It's what I call a bijou residence, this place. So many things in such a small space. And we're staying with Waxara's sister Mary and her partner Susie. And here's a view of their garden. Now just look how different from any garden you've ever seen in the United Kingdom. It's basically black volcanic stone with a few plants, and every single plant in that garden is carefully watered, because if you don't water your plants, they die. That's about what we learned straight away in Fuerteventura. And the other thing is the high walls are to protect you against the very strong winds which are blowing most of the time. So you go out the house, there's a strong wind blowing, that high wall and that door gives you shelter so you can sun yourself in your garden. And here we are, we're staying in a place called Park Hollandaise, and it's a most unusual development. Never encountered anything like it. In fact, that's really my summarization for this entire trip to Fuerteventura. An island and environment totally different from anything I've ever known before. And at the moment I'm being fooled and conned, because actually there's lots of trees, there's olive trees, all sorts of other trees and shrubs and flowers, and it's looking really lovely. And it's a typical street scene. There's a hotel over the road, and these are all what I call residential, local people. This is not a tourist development, all local people living in them. So here we are in our hired Fiat 500, and if you want to go around an island like Fuerteventura, it's the most perfect thing you could possibly hope for. A nice small car, so easy to handle. And there's our first view of the sea the following morning, because we did arrive at night. And the joy of being close to the sea and knowing that we're on our way to our first water experience. Obviously it's the first day, first thing you want to do, get in the sea. And so the rocky landscape changes, and suddenly we're into sandy country, sand dunes, and on the right hand side there's an endless variety of beaches of all different sizes and shapes. Well, here's one. This will do very nicely, thank you. So we're going to stop in here and we're going to get out of the car. Now when we open the car door, it's like, ooh, grab hold of the car door, because the wind is blowing it really hard. You don't want it to slam against your leg. So we go out and we accept the fact that it's going to be a wind blaster, and we just get in that sea and we have a wonderful experience, having those Atlantic waves just washing all the negative energy from the aeroplane trip off and leaving us clean and fresh to continue our journey. And it's a wonderful journey of exploration. It just continues. We get to experience all sorts of interesting places. So here's one. This was actually over on the west coast, and it was just a lovely little town with a fort. You can see the fort, that black thing in the middle there. The idea of a fort, it's strange. It's like an upside down bucket which you've got some black sand in. That's kind of what it looks like, and it's made of volcanic stones. This is obviously a fishing town. You can see all the fishing boats there, and the sky, the endless blue, which we got almost all the time we were there. So here we are, arriving in a different place for another look around, different town. So we took the days we were there to do a lot of exploring, and we did do some visits to some conventional tourist locations, which were just what you'd expect them to do. You know, wall-to-wall McDonald's, Burger King, Costa and all the rest of it. But if you were to be prepared to get in the car and go off the beaten track, then you can find yourself some really traditional living circumstances of the people. So there we are. The car has left us and we can see this typical scene. It's semi-desert. You can see a few plants growing. There's a couple of cyclists, are brave people in that heat. And there's another opportunity to get into the sea, which of course we did take. Every single day in the sea made such a difference to my state of being. Felt so good there, and that's partly because of that, also because of having lots and lots of sun. That was nice too. And the wind was the price that we paid, and I went from I'm a person who can't bear the wind to it's windy every day, get over it, it's windy, hey, it's just windy, hey, whatever. And so that was a good teaching experience for me to realise it's okay to be where the wind is. for a while. I have heard of a Canary Island. There's a windmill just to show that the wind was useful historically. They used to mill grains here. Now, as you'll see, look at that landscape. Where are they going to grow their wheat or their barley? Because it just looks to be so inhospitable, so dry, and such lack of rainfall. I mean, that's your typical scene. Look at it. There is no chance of anyone growing any crops in this area from what I can see. And that really was our picture that we picked up. Now, the roads are actually pretty good for driving. We've got no problem driving on the roads. Very easy. Not many cars, just delightful in every possible way. But there's something about that landscape that after a while it starts to get to you. Now, here we discover something. We see this stone wall, and all the stones are made from volcanic rock. And we stopped off at this village, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because I'm looking at broad beans and potato plants, but they appear to be growing out of volcanic rock that's been pulverized into powder. And I'm going, what? Is that even possible? Well, there's nothing so gullible as a tourist. I spoke to Waxara's family about this after our day out, and they did explain actually what it is. There's soil underneath, but they find if they have the bare soil and the plants die because the water is evaporated so fast. If they pour all the volcanic rock powder on, problem solved. So here we are exploring this lovely little town called Oliva, and there was a place just outside the town. I was drawn to the interesting plants. Just look at those colours, look at those oranges and reds. And don't these plants just look so unlike anything that I could ever expect to see in England, the UK, or even most of Europe? I mean, you see the dryness, and yet these plants they're clinging on to some existence. They're actually succeeding in being alive and growing. I think that's remarkable. And this actually was about the greatest biodiversity we saw anywhere on the whole island. You don't normally get such a variety as what we get here. And you can notice what there is a lot of here is lichens, and the lichens, they grow on the rocks. There we are, there's the lichens, and they grow on the surfaces of the plants. That orange is a lichen, and that fluffy feathery stuff is a lichen too. Lichens are a remarkable life form. And here is this plant which reminds me of the crystalline entity from the Star Trek the first series. If you ever saw that, it's an extraterrestrial entity, and I just know that some guy in the Star Trek show must have seen that plant and thought, we'll use that for our sci-fi entity. So I just like that particular plant. And there's more of the lichen. So a lichen is a combination of two life forms, an alga and a fungus. The alga makes the sugars by using the light from the sun, and the fungus absorbs the water. Each life form on its own is not able to live. When they put themselves together, they've got vibrant life. And the thing about lichens, they grow 1 or 2 millimeters a year. So when you're looking at these rocks and stones and plants covered with lichen, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years growth is what I'm actually looking at. So I'm looking at a landscape which would have possibly looked the same maybe more than 1,000 years ago. You can see we're right at the edge of the village here. Nice little traditional houses, quite small, and they're either white or they have this kind of grey thing where you can see they leave a few stones uncovered. I don't know why they like to do that, but it seems to be kind of traditional, kind of Fuerteventura sort of fashion when it comes to houses. So mostly white, but showing a few uncovered stones on the outside. And so just that sense of dryness, the extremeness of the dryness, and how these plants have made this choice. We're going to live, we're going to thrive, nothing is going to stop us. And that plant produces huge shape, as you can see. Look how big they are. Those are the flowers. So every so many years, massive, great big stalk, huge number of flowers, and there they are reproducing again. So these plants, they really left me with this feeling of the power and the strength of the plant kingdom, and its life force determined to survive in whatever shape or form it chooses to take up. And it's conserving water. Every form you can see is all about keeping the water in there. And those tiny little red things, you know, when you look at them in detail, they're amazing. Some of them just got 2 tiny little leaves and that's it. And yet there they are. And look at that one. I mean, to me, that is just so... I could even use the word psychedelic with those colours. And yeah, I know. Isn't it amazing what grows on this planet Earth? Such biodiversity. And this plant, I mean, it's as big as a tree, but that's actually a giant succulent next to the cactus on the right hand side. Such an unusual plant. And one evening we ordered a meal from the restaurant. I couldn't believe it. It was lamb, but it was like the Sunday joint for 4 people over some potatoes. I mean, I think I ate about 5-6% of it. There was just so much. And I thought to myself, interesting thing about the culture, if they eat meat, they eat really massive amounts. Bit surprising. So here I am on yet another journey somewhere. In fact, this looks like one of the places we really did like is Oliva, because it's a really traditional small town. Their concession to tourism is very, very minimal, and you just get the sense of what the place is like when they put the money in to make it decent for them to live in. It's actually it's like the equivalent of the capital town for the region, so it gets extra money. And so you can see the housing style of the white with little things there, and you can see the massive mountains there. This is a very unusual building, which was a museum, and right next to it, this building was actually used, not the new one but the old one, to film the film Exodus. So this has been used as a biblical setting. Massive piece of volcanic stone at the outside. Look at that, used to film what it would have been like 2,000 years ago in times of Exodus in the Bible. Now you see those palm trees and you see these flowers. I didn't grasp it immediately, but after I've been there a couple of days I realised that this is all intervention of man. This is all artificial. This has been done by people. Every tree, every flower has been watered to the hilt. And I'll let you into the secret about how these trees exist. There's a lorry that goes round regularly, and it's got a big pipe on the end, and they just take the pipe off and they just pour huge amounts of water onto each and every tree. Now here we are at the aloe vera centre. There are many of these because aloe vera is one of the very few plants that grows naturally, okay, without help, in Fuerteventura. Now these have actually got an irrigation system to give them water, and that makes sure that they're more successful and produces a good crop for the people that are marketing these. And they have aloe vera and everything you can think of, all sorts of cosmetic products, beauty products, health products, all sorts there, and there's lots of those places. So good connection with the aloe vera plant. And let's see what else we're going to say about this town. Well, you see that wonderful mountain ahead. Basically wherever you go, you're going to be driving either away from one of those or towards one of those. And this is a totally amazing moment because, shock horror, it's actually raining. It lasted for about 15 seconds, but hey, just wanted to record it. It's possible it rains. So that's how these plants cling on to life. Every once in a while a few drops come out of the sky, everything gets damp and they suck up that water. So here's another view, and this is a very tiny village right off the beaten track, well off, and we had to stop because this is a field. The field is full of stones and there are goats in the field. Now you might say, big deal, why is he excited about goats? Because one of their main exports is goat's cheese. We didn't see any goats. These are the only goats you saw on the entire visit to Fuerteventura. So there's a small number of fields with goats in. There's a strange looking engine in the field. Now this is an eco-museum, so the buildings are built and the roofs are made of something called straw clay. That's straw clay, a mixture of straw and clay. If you did that in any part of the world like Europe, it would actually be washed away by the rain within a couple of weeks. There's so little rain they can actually put straw clay on the roof and it works perfectly well. And that funny little structure there, it looks a bit like a church on the left hand side. Well, every time you enter a new province they put one of those things up. It's like a portal, it's to the side of the road and it just says you're now entering the province of Oliva or whatever it's called. Rather strange, but it's just, I like these little quirky things about different places and where they do things. So their provinces like to say, hello, we exist. So here we are on another journey. And let's see where this one is going to take us. Ah, right, yes, this is the one that's going to take us at Waxar. I wasn't terribly keen about because it's full of hairpin bends and sharp turns. And very bravely, she was actually doing the driving along here. So all power to Waxar from confronting her fear and embracing it and doing it anyway. And obviously cars going fast as you'd expect. And just creeping slowly higher and higher up the mountain. And then we get our first glimpse of our... where we're letting go. We're leaving that little area behind. That's where the goats were that we saw, and we're going up this mountain. We're going to explore the ancient capital of all the Canary Islands. That's our destination at the moment. We were told you've got to go there because it's very special. So we thought, oh my goodness me, there's a coach, and Waxara was rather disturbed about how close that coach was to the car. And there we are, there's a sign, and actually she had to stop because another coach came straight after her, and it seemed to be even larger and actually extending over our side of the road. So it was a bit of a nerve-wracking moment there for Waxara, but she handled it perfectly well, kept calm, and we're back on our road again. And that's just like a typical view to give you the idea of mountain ranges, just loads and loads of mountain ranges. And we're almost at the point where we're reaching the top. And you can see the sea in the distance there, obviously. And so at the moment it's coming. We're going to see this view. Here's a view of the top. Right, here we go. So that's all the area we're familiar with, that we know about. And we're pretty much at the summit here. A couple of interesting sculptures. That palm tree was watered by a lorry going every week. Betancuria, that's where we're headed. And there it is. So that is, just imagine an oasis in the desert, in a hostile landscape. That's what that is. That's an oasis. So that's where we're going, because we're told that this is relatively unspoilt, and it's ancient capital. You can get a sense of a feeling of the Canary Islands of being here. So we've arrived and we're looking around, and we're taking into account all the trees that are here and the space. And obviously enough, there's going to be like a town centre. There's a church, there's restaurants, there's cafes, there's shops, there's people with shops selling traditional Canary Islands cheese from Fuerteventura, all these things you'd expect. There's a bit of agriculture going on. Obviously there's the irrigation system, otherwise there wouldn't be a plant growing in that little field. So make sure everything's well watered. And you can see the style of the architecture. The houses are quite small, and you can imagine that would be for all sorts of reasons. A small house is easy to keep, and it will keep the heat out. The white always reflects the heat. And yeah, a lot of people like to come and have a look around here. We can see the church. There it is on the right on the side. And some of these churches are open. You can go and have a look in, and some of them are closed. That particular one was closed. And so a lot of cacti around here. And yeah, this is just a typical view, really gives you an idea of what the place is like. Really hot, but lots of lovely places to shelter, people selling stuff in the market stall. Always nice to see when you go to a place like that. And just at the end of this track, this little road, that's pretty much the end of the small town, and when we're right out into your typical wild nature again. And that was just amusing for Waxara, because it was a place that sold vegan burgers at the point she was on a vegan diet, so it was very convenient for her. This degree of shelter, and we hear wood pigeons, and we've even seen apple trees inside the walled garden where our cafe was. So as I was walking around this oasis, because that's what it is, I became aware of just how incredibly important it is, water. And so there's a wonderful story about one of the Canary Islands. It's one of the smaller ones, and what happened is that different people from probably Africa had tried to raid and occupy and colonize that island. And the thing is, there was only one source of water in the entire island. It's rather like in this particular place, there's that little tiny river that's running through it. Well, in this island I'm talking about, there was one source of water, and it was coming from underneath a tree. And the story was, as long as that tree was safe, then the people would be safe. And indeed it was so, because waves of people would try to colonize that island, and because they had to carry their own water, there were no desalinization plants in those days, and the tree was protected and guarded. They never got any water, so they had to go back defeated every time, until one time one of the soldiers got to be friends with one of the islanders, a woman, and then she showed them the tree, and that was the end of that particular island civilization. And indeed they were taken over. So look at the, so little water in that, just a tiny trickle, and yet that is enough to keep all those plants going. So that's what makes this an oasis, because it's the only riverbed I saw on Fuerteventura with any water in it at all at any time. All the others are dry riverbeds, so the flash floods, which obviously must occur sometimes. So what a difference trees make. It's the shelter, it's the shade. It really makes it so much more lovely to be outside in the heat of the summer if you've got trees around. So that's a very important thing about this island, the fact they've got so many trees in the Oasis. So here we are now in a different place altogether, and just having a look around, and in fact we're back in that Oliva, and this is the market. So very lucky to be there on market day. So we go in, and you think, yeah, market's usually outside. Of course the sun is so relentlessly strong, you've got to have your market inside, or otherwise all your produce is going to shrivel up in the heat. And as usual, when you go inside traditional market, that's what that means. You go inside and you have to get a moment to adjust to the light differences, and they're selling all sorts of different crafts, things that people make. And that's the place where they sell the traditional cheeses, and here's where the traditional breads are sold. Even nice things like focaccia and pizza and croissants, as well as your more traditional Canary Island breads. I always like to go to a place where you can taste the bread that's people are eating. And here we are. What is so nice about this is all the producers are small local producers, and they're maybe half an hour's drive away, and they've got these incredible polytunnels with irrigation systems. Now these are the electric flowers. Amazing, they come from Brazil. When you put one of these into your mouth and start to chew it, well, it's not like anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. And on the very last retreat, everyone got to try an electric flower. It's like an explosion of electricity in your mouth, which lasts for a good 10 or 15 minutes. It's antimicrobial, antibiotic, very health promoting, but my goodness, what a blast for the mouth. Look at that unusual pumpkin there, lots of tomatoes, all the usual things you'd expect to find in a Mediterranean culture is what they grow. And the quality was just outstanding. It's all organic. So here we are, we've come back from the market that you've already seen, and we've got everything that we could possibly have wanted from the market. Fruits, vegetables, dairy food, bread, and even things like toilet roll and bin liners for us to deal with disposing of the rubbish in the house. So it's pretty amazing. And there's something even more surprising. Yes, that's right. Apart from all the things you can imagine, there's even something we couldn't imagine. This is cannabis tea, and it contains CBD and other cannabinoids. And this was also available in the market. So just imagine that. Imagine going to a market in England where you could buy all your fruit, all your vegetables, all your needs for food, toilet rolls, bags, and even something like that. In your dreams, eh? And that's it. All from the local market, nothing from a multinational conglomerate. Now we're on our way to the south of Fuerteventura, so we'll show you what the south is like. Okay, so we just stopped so you could have a bit of a look. This is what it looks like. I love the juxtaposition of these plants and this rusty can. Exactly like the crystalline entity from Star Trek, first series. That's another crystalline entity type plant, and it's in flower. Isn't that amazing? And just look at these trees clinging on to some form of existence. That's what I call an unhappy tree. And we're now approaching Grunt, and suddenly there are all these palm trees everywhere. So we've arrived at another town, looking for an experience to get in the sea. It's actually quite grey and cloudy, as you can see. Not quite as warm as we'd like it to be. But again, what I like about this small town is it's like traditional style. It's not overrun by McDonald's and Burger King and all the rest of it. It's local producers selling little things in little cafes, just like you'd expect. Children playing in the square, lots of little things for them to play on. And now we're just going to enjoy a typical cafe experience, and we do a tarot reading for the tarot training while we're there. And again, just noticing the artwork, sculpture, the trees, nice environment in this town. Yeah, it felt a nice comfortable place to spend a little bit of time and enjoy. But what then did surprise us is that they're really keen on their artwork. So here we are, this is the first artwork that we noticed. A couple going to the beach, nice cartoony style, and then the octopus and the camel with the amazing city beneath it. So it was lovely to be in a place where artwork was encouraged in that way. Really nice to see. So we're now headed for Travelogue. That's quite an achievement for an English person to say that. We're continuing even further to the south and to the west on our journey, and just noticing the landscape, how it is. Going into yet another small town. You can see it's quite modern, and there's some lovely cuddly looking trees over on the left hand side there, beautifully trimmed into those nice shapes. And another opportunity for a water experience here with the sea right now. You can see the wind blowing on that tree. That's the level of wind you've got pretty much all the time you're there. So we're just going further south from Costa Calva, and suddenly it's dunes again. Lots of sand blowing over the road. Being present to the quality of the nature, the dryness, the wildness. And there's yet another opportunity, and just look at the colour of that sea. Absolutely delightful. And so we actually got to Morrojable, which is the last of the places on our trip down to the southwest. Loads of trees, grass. Now this may not seem like a big deal to you, but that's the first grass we saw the entire time we're there. We're obviously in a high value tourist area for there to actually be bothering to make all that grass irrigated. Wind blasting us as per usual, as you would expect. Again, all the flowers, this is all hard work, all the irrigation, all the care that's had to go into keeping these plants alive in what is a very dry, inhospitable terrain pretty much everywhere else. And we did cross that road and we did go over, but look at that bird, very interesting bird there. I don't know what it is, but it's really interesting, and it's actually a traditional bird from Fuerteventura. They're well known. I don't know what it is. So there we are, typical traditional pizza meal in a conventional touristy restaurant, and very nice it was too. I like my pizza occasionally. And then just having a little look around at the area, getting a sense of what it's like. So there were sports bars here with massive TVs, so you could watch sport whenever you wanted to. There's a mysterious bird again, and I was most pleased to get that shot. So they're finding insects to eat, despite that ground being, you know, desert that's just been turned over into a bit of temporary grass. Now this is an interesting little walk because it's down into a subway across the main road. Quite amazing they could be bothered to do that, but I just like the graffiti. Art is not a crime. Yep, that's what they say, art is not a crime. So they're into their art, this part of the world, they really are. A rainbow, that's right. Can you believe it? We actually saw a rainbow in the place without rain. That was an incredible good piece of luck there. It wasn't raining where we were, but it was in the distance. And so now here we are in a completely different location. We're back to the place where we've been staying all the time with Waxara's sister and her partner. And it's a lot sunnier because the parasol's out. And as I said before, all these high walls are creating shelter from the wind. And there's a shower outside, so it shows how hot it gets. People have a cold shower outside just to cool off. Temperature is usually 23, 24 in the evening, down to about 21, 22, but steady kind of temperature, really lovely, and great to be able to eat outside. That's a great treat for an English person. Have all my breakfast outside, that was lovely. So now just look at the colour of that rock, that rich reddish brown colour. And what it reminds me of, you just let go of that pylon for a moment, because when you look at that view, that reddish colour, it reminds me of a planet not so far away when you think about the planet Mars. In fact, the joke is if they ever wanted to fake a Mars landing, what they'd do is they'd bring all the film crew to Fuerteventura and they'd choose the right location, and that's what they'd have. Now look at the seashells. Seashells? Yeah, the ground is covered with seashells. This tells us something really fantastic and valuable. this island actually was under the Atlantic Ocean. Basically, a huge volcanic eruption caused the soil to be pushed above the surface of the water. That's why there's gazillions of little shells, because there's no water to support shells and snails to live there in the present time, but historically they were. That lichen is like a sky blue colour, really weird coloured lichen, not grey, not white, but blue. That's more your greeny, grey coloured lichens you expect to see everywhere. I just thought that's such a beautiful shape, that one. I love it. And here we are in yet another location. We can see the mountains as per usual in a near distance. And yes, how many times do I go to Oliva? Quite a lot, because there's yet another visit there. And there's the church, and the church is made of volcanic rock. We're going past quite quickly, but there it is. That's the church. And I do like, if I can, to go into a church, and you can see this one is open, so yay, we get to go in this one. So that was an experience, as you now see. So just turning around to look at that, the whole church made from this volcanic rock which is black, and I'm doing a little walk through the town just to give you an idea. They've gone to the trouble, that's the actual town hall, I suppose you would call that, and they've created all these areas with a bit of landscaping and plants growing and lights, just to kind of give you a sense of the place. It's almost like it was built for there to be a lot of people, but when we were there it was pretty deserted, to say the least. And yeah, the only cafe that I saw in the whole of Oliva, and now this is the ultimate in indulgence and luxury. In an island without water, we've got a fountain. So how about that? So just look at that somber sky, olive trees there, obviously carefully watered by the lorries that go round, pouring loads of water out of each one. Now this is my interesting experience that I love. So look at these tiny little plants again, the little red plants. So what I decided, I want to actually have a wild experience in Fuerteventura. I had 3, but I want to take you along this one with the iPad. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to walk up a mountain. That's what I thought I'd do. I was attracted to do that, and just to notice what I could see on the way up. And that's what I'm headed for. Now you've got to bear in mind that there's a gale force wind blowing the whole time, and that makes walking a lot more difficult than it would be otherwise. Now that ground and that shape, you can see that's where the flash floods would come to water, would pour through down that space there and rush down the mountain in great torrents on the rare occasions when it does that. So yeah, there was a whole series of what I'd call kind of gashes in the mountain, and there's your view. There's that Oliva in the distance we could see. So we're leaving this mountain behind now, and we're off on another journey. And on our way we encountered this small village, and we saw, oh, there's a lot of cactus, more than normal. There's usually hardly any. We saw these trees, we thought, okay, what's this place like? And then lo and behold, we went a little bit further, and we discover what the people are doing here is it's actually agriculture. They're growing things, and here we are. This is the only crop we ever saw growing on the entire time we were on the island. It looks like potatoes from this distance, a traditional thing for them to grow out there, and of course all irrigated. That's the only way that's going to grow. And then just gives you an idea when you look here, just look what kind of soil they're growing in. It's pretty basic, isn't it? I mean, basically without the water there's nothing much going to happen there at all. And we can see the irrigation supplying all those palm trees. So off we go to Tindaya. Gonna have a shamanic experience in the wild nature, communing with it. But it's quite rare to see houses just out in the middle of nowhere, but there are a few here. quite a large house, completely on its own. It's a mountain we're on our way to visit. Over there are a few plants. Yeah, there's even a few palm trees, because we're just on the edge of the village. Now when I take us over on this side, you see something completely different. It looks like it might be perhaps some kind of extraterrestrial type scene. And mysteriously, all the stones on this side of the road are covered in lichens. And they're pretty spectacular. We're going to go and check them out now. And just look at this landscape. So here I am, and I'm in the area which I didn't realise at the time, but is the outfall from the volcanic eruption, and all the volcanic stones are completely covered in these lichens, and we've seen little bits of them earlier, but here the entire landscape is totally covered with these lichens. And this reminds me to say something incredibly important you need to know about. If lichens are growing somewhere, it means the air is pure. So the air on Fuerteventura has to be one of the most pure airs in the world, because if you can have so many rocks completely covered in lichens, they're happy. Pure air, nice one. So here we are driving on one of the very few straight roads, heading towards Mahanicho and the sea. So then we were attracted to drive to this particular beach. Now there's a huge complex where people are living as tourists not far from it, but what really struck me about this is you're on the dirt track, which I like, and the beach is incredible because it's a covert shelter, so the big waves are outside in the distance, but you're swimming in the really quiet, calm waters right next to you. That is so lovely to have a swim in the calm waters after having been battered by the waves, as I have been on some of my swimming experiences. And here, the other thing about this village is you saw these little houses. There's not a cafe, there's not a shop, there's nothing to service the tourist industry here. You go and you enjoy the water, you enjoy the sun, but if you want anything, you're going to have to go somewhere else for it. So people living their traditional lifestyles, just wanting to get on with their lives in their own ways, and I can understand and appreciate that from them, really. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So it was just nice to see. Obviously fishing would be the main activity because there's lots of fishing boats around. You might have noticed those on the pan. And here another windmill. So windmills, this shows me that once upon a time they must have grown grains. Now I haven't mentioned it to you, but when you see the shots of the mountains you will notice these little grooves. That's right, it's called terracing. So you've got the mountains and they've got these terraces. Those terraces must have grown grains, and those windmills must have milled the grains, and that's what the people that lived off. Fuerteventura means a strong adventure. So Fuerte is strong, and Ventura is adventure. And it is true, this place is a strong adventure. It's a strong energy being here. And of course the other thing is it's a strong wind. And it's fascinating to me that there are these windmills all over the island, which is proof that at one time they must have grown their own grains to mill the grains into flour. So right outside our place where we've been staying all this time, Park Hollandaise, there's this huge ramshackle building on the right hand side, and it's painted up and it's called itself Yoga Centre. This is quite something because this is a squat. So someone's built this building and some people have squatted it and turned it into a yoga centre, and yes, that's right, every day there's yoga there. And when you go inside you can see there's very simple lighting set up and there's lots of coloured materials to make it nice inside. But yeah, that's right, people come here and they do yoga and they don't pay for it, they just give donations or they give produce. So it's interesting to be aware that in an island which is full of tourism, here we've got a group of people squatting a building and doing something to raise people's energy and promote people's health. And you can actually see, there it is, Racha Yoga. If you look, you can, we'll get Dan to blow it up, you can actually see the website so you can find out more about them. And that's the end of our wonderful experiences in Fuerteventura. Literally life-changing, just to have the experience of being somewhere so incredibly dry, because I live in one of the wettest parts of the world. So thank you very much, Fuerteventura, and a great thank you to Mary and Susie for being our wonderful, most understanding hosts. Thank you.